not the biggest fan when it comes to HOAs. And when I come across articles, when I'm doing research for my videos, when I see something like this, I just lose it.
Now, this story is getting a lot of people fired up online. A couple in Texas City being sued by their homeowners association. They could be on the hook for $100,000, all because of a few flower beds.
So here it is. You didn't ask for it, but you're going to get it. I'm going to give you the most unhinged rant when it comes to HOAs. And at any time during this video, you can pause and tell me your horror stories when it comes to HOAs. I think they're terrible for affordable housing, and they're just going to make it worse, especially if we allow these management companies to continue to take control.
I love these trees.
Just over a year ago, Pat Fitzgerald planted 2 magnolias in front of his Merritt Island home, the same kind of trees that line much of the rest of the River Grove subdivision. His homeowners association fined him $100 a day until the total reached $5,000.
So I've lived in a neighborhood that didn't have an HOA, and then I purposely left that neighborhood because it didn't have an HOA. I had neighbors that would park their cars on their lawn. I had people that would put their boats out on the street so you couldn't even see your kids riding their bikes down the street. We had people that left their Christmas decorations up 24/7, 365 days a year, and I understand there is a place for an HOA. But let me just show you some petty things that have come up, especially with this election year.
We're not knocking on doors and complaining because we feel those people are hanging it for a reason and they're proud.
So far, the HOAs fined the couple $150. According to this notice, the nature of the violation is for political signs.
I don't give two flying flips who you vote for. You vote for the policies that make you happy and the candidate that you like. And an HOA determining that if you can or cannot have a political sign up, in most HOAs, it will tell you that you have a limitation. You can have the political sign 30 days before the election and 5 days after the election. And some HOAs will even flat out tell you can have any political signs, but you're going to have to check with your state when it comes to that, because they may say that in the covenants, but the state law overrules what the HOA has to say. Now, the one thing that they can tell you when it comes to any political sign is they can tell you the size of the sign. So you're going to have to look up in your HOA what it says in the sign, and don't go over, because you know there's some negative Nancy that's going to be out there with a yardstick making sure it's the right height.
Politics, 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 politics.
But you know, another thing that HOAs have gotten in trouble for is flags.
In March, she first placed a set of American flags outside her Palm Harbor home.
I had about 15 of them. Just the little tiny ones that you get at the dollar store.
1 month later, her homeowners association sent her a letter. Since then, she's received 3 more, saying, remove miscellaneous items from view. Small flags outlining the front yard are a violation of HOA rules.
Now, HOAs cannot tell you that you can't display the American flag, but again, they can tell you exactly the size of the American flag and where it can and cannot be displayed. So like how some people will take the little American flags along the driveway during like the 4th of July. They'll say that those are holiday decorations and they need to be removed. If you have one American flag that you display often, they'll say that it has to be like attached to the house. Each HOA has a different rule when it comes to displaying the American flag. You're going to have to check with your state rules as well as your HOA rules. Some even have some rule that you can't even like display it in the window if it can be seen from the street. So ridiculous. Why does anybody care what you do on your property? It's one thing to drive a car on your front lawn. It's another thing to display a flag that is non-offensive to anybody. Oh, and another petty gripe when it comes to HOAs. This one's petty, but it comes from native plants.
We learned about other gardening, native plants in the area that are better for birds, butterflies, and bugs even.
But that feeling was uprooted with this, a notice from their homeowners association.
Telling us that we had to take it all out and replace it with turf grass. Just took one person complaining. It was literally one person complaining.
So in some areas, like in Arizona, they say that you can only plant native plants in the neighborhood. And then in other states, they will dictate exactly what plants you can and cannot have. And they can prohibit native plants that grow in your area. They can say, no, you can't have those in your yard. Unbelievable. I happen to live in Louisiana, and some HOAs have dictated that you can't use certain kinds of trees. We are very common for cypress trees here. And they say, no, you can't have cypress trees because they get too big, which is ridiculous. They're beautiful. But that's part of living in an HOA. If you happen to live in an area that has a lot of new construction, you're going to notice that every single development that is being built has already got an HOA. And you're probably wondering, how is that possible? There's only like 3 houses in there. Well, the builder controls the HOA then.
Found many homeowners say their voice is not heard in meetings because they don't control their own board. The developer does.
Usually when you get those restrictions, when you go to buy a new house or you're about to buy a new house, you'll see that the developer and the builder have control of that HOA, and they can do anything with it at that time. The reason they hold control of it is they want the new people that are moving in to maintain the neighborhood so that when they go ahead and sell all of their lots, they're all looking pretty much the same, and they keep the prices of those HOA dues really low. And the builder will tell you, oh, don't worry about it. At the end, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to the residents, and you can do with the HOA what you want. But what the builder doesn't tell you is that he's already signed a contract in the subdivision's name under a management company. And the other thing the builder doesn't tell you, a lot of the debts of the HOA are now your responsibility now that you're a homeowner and the HOA is turned over to you. And what I'm talking about is if the builder decides to go ahead and put in a pool, that pool may be funded by your HOA.
Since January of her HOA increased residents' dues by 33% to pay for this still unfinished pool and amenity center. The builder of both neighborhoods, Lennar, controls the homeowners associations. That's because the way state law is currently written, there is no limit to what's called the development period. Essentially, how long a developer or builder can control an HOA.
Now it's your responsibility to pay it off. You don't even know what the loan terms are. You have no idea until that HOA is turned over to you as residents. So be very careful and be very diligent about reading your HOA rules and find out the financials of it even before the builder sends it back over to you and that management company. You're entitled to know, by the way. You're completely entitled to know. We can love thy neighbor, we can love thy HOA, but what we don't really need to love is the management companies, because the management companies are usually the cause of many of the problems that happen in a neighborhood.
This woman is accused of stealing more than $500,000 in HOA money, and the neighbors who worked hard to pay their fees are fuming.
She was angry when she found out the property manager was accused of taking nearly $600,000 of the HOA's money.
I don't know how she got away with it.
They're the ones who enact the fines. They're the ones who have secret meetings. They're the ones that do the accounting on all the books. They're the ones who find all the vendors that take care of things, and they're the ones that are supposed to be handling the reserves. And we're going to get into the reserves in a minute. But when it comes to management companies, most of them, a good portion of them, are in it for one thing, and that's to make money. You can't blame a company for wanting to make money, but it's the way that they try to make money to maximize their profits that it becomes pretty disgusting. I've done many videos about how HOA companies have forced people into foreclosure. And you're probably like, well, they didn't pay their dues, so of course they're going to go into foreclosure. No. This is not what they're doing. They're being very sneaky about it.
None of it makes any sense.
Each month, Karen Gibbons mailed a check for HOA dues on her Gwinnett County condo to the address provided in writing at closing. But she says she never knew when or if it would be cashed.
It was just random.
Then out of the blue, she was served with this, a notice of foreclosure by her HOA. Thousands of dollars in attorney fees. She owed more than $30,000.
Some HOAs know that these residents haven't paid their bills on time. They will claim that they sent a letter, a registered letter, and the people will pull up that registered letter, and then sure enough, that wasn't even their signature. And they will start the process of foreclosure with the courthouse immediately. They're already knowing that they're setting it up for a lawsuit. And the longer they drag this out, the more that the fines start to accrue for the person that was late on that one payment. I saw a story not too long ago, it was probably about 6 months ago, of a woman who had a fine of $650. She was behind on 3 months of her HOA dues. By the time that she actually found out what was going on with her house and she was being forced in foreclosure, all the fines that had accrued were $10,000. She owed $650. The HOA management company had tacked on $10,000 worth of fines. That is ridiculous. And you know what? There's nothing that's stopping them. There is no regulation when it comes to HOAs, and that is a huge issue. These management companies have gone rogue, and they know what they're doing. And some of these homeowners that did go into foreclosure lost every bit of equity in their house because it was sold at auction for a quarter of the price that it would have been sold on the open market. Even more insidious, some of these HOA management companies go ahead and buy those houses back, and they buy it for like a couple $100s. Now, the management company not only manages the HOA, they also have a new rental. Super gross, right? It's disgusting. I can see it now. Hedge funds are probably licking their lips and doing this. They're now hearing how they can make more money in HOAs by tacking on a bunch of fines. And you know they're going to be next. You know they're going to be starting to invest in HOAs so that way they can have more control of our houses. But that's a different rant for a different time. Buying a house is super exciting, but it's also super hectic. And there's so much paperwork flying across your desk, and you're signing all these different things just to get the house that you want. But in a lot of cases, you kind of forget about the HOA. You look at the neighborhood and you're like, oh, it looks good. But you don't really think that their rules would, affect you in any way. If you are planning on purchasing a house, please, for the love of all that's holy, go ahead and ask your real estate agent or the listing agent for a copy of the restrictions. If they say, well, we can't get a copy of the restrictions or the sellers don't have a copy, that is the responsibility of that listing agent to dig those up. If you happen to be under contract and you still haven't gotten the copy of those restrictions, please do an addendum to your contract that states that you will not close on this house unless you have a copy of those restrictions so you can look over them. There's so many rules within those HOAs you may have no clue about, and it may be the reason why you don't want to live in that specific neighborhood. I think looking over those HOA restrictions is just as important as any other paperwork you're going to be looking at through this whole entire process of buying a house. I know it's another thing you have to think about with inspections and everything else. I promise you, this is one of those things you're going to thank me for later on. So while we're throwing real estate agents under the bus when it comes to HOAs, I can honestly say that I think a good portion of them don't consider them themselves. They, too, look at the neighborhood and say, well, it's well maintained. I already know the builder. I already have some friends that live here. We haven't had any issues. You may not have issues yet. Who knows if the new management company comes along and causes an issue.
The city of Henderson, they had 2 weeks to fix their broken pipes or 85 families would be forced to leave. Repairs are now underway at the Somerset Park townhomes. And for the first time, we're hearing from the new HOA management company that stepped in after the last disappeared, taking the community's money with them.
All right, now let's talk about reserves. The reserves are the little kitty off to the side that they hold for a rainy day or a flood or a repair to the pool. That little extra money for who knows what happens. HOAs have been basically set up so that your local government doesn't have to maintain the roads. They don't have to maintain the streetlights. They don't have to maintain poop within that HOA itself. They don't want to have anything to do with it. Mine doesn't even allow trash service. I have to get my own trash service. But if you have like a massive snowstorm in your area and your roads need to be plowed, if you happen to be in an HOA, the HOA is required to plow that road, not your city. If your roads need to be repaved and they have a bunch of potholes, that isn't up to the state or the city. It's up to your HOA. If someone happens to drive their car into the sign of your neighborhood, guess whose responsibility that is? That is the responsibility of the HOA. You may have insurance on that. Again, though, that's a part of the price that you pay to live in an HOA. Hey, that rhymed. I didn't even intend that to. But they have to hold money in reserve, and they have to hold a lot of it. And you have to use it for those rainy days. And when you first move into a new neighborhood, you're thinking, well, how much reserves do we actually need? The cost alone just to repair a pool is ridiculous every single year. So I always say, overestimate, because you'll never regret it.
According to Condo Doc's assessments in Mediterranean Village in Williams Island, where Konitz lives, are as high as $400,000 for just one apartment. Projects budgeted for his building include everything from consultants to roofing, concrete restoration, elevator modernization, termite treatment, And $700,000 alone for landscaping?
Somebody also told me, well, if you're not able to pay your...
Some of the saddest stories when it comes to HOAs have come out of Florida in the past year. And that's because the HOAs kept their fees so incredibly low that over time, when the state came around and did their inspections, they said they had to bring it back up to code in order to continue as a condo association. And those HOA fees ended up being an assessment that the homeowners had to pay. Some of those assessments that these residents have been getting are over $100,000. I don't know about you, but I don't have an extra $100,000 laying around to give to an HOA for past HOA problems that have been left to the wayside. It's forcing a lot of people, especially retirees, to sell because they don't have that money to fork out for this. And that's the part that really ticks me off, because these people are looking for the most affordable way to live out their golden years. They purposely lived in an area where they wouldn't have to maintain the yards. And they kept those HOA fees low because that's what they thought they had to pay. They didn't know they were going to have to save extra money in the future because they thought the HOA was taking care of it. And now they're stuck in this situation. And where are they going to go? Where are they going to find another condo that has the same prices that they've been paying for the last 15, 20 years? Who's to say that the next condo that they go to isn't going to have the same issue a year later? And condo associations aren't the only ones that are facing this. This is happening in mobile home parks too, because they're run just like a homeowners association. They have to maintain those roads and lights and plumbing and everything else. The deferred maintenance that these HOAs have been kicking down the road for years and years and years has caught up to them. And now the residents are having to pay the price. There's no way that anybody could have estimated the cost of these things going up as much as they did. But these management companies are not stupid. They've been managing many properties across the United States. They should have been raising those HOA fees for several years, not sticking it to people at one time. I genuinely don't like HOAs. Genuinely.
But when asked, they admitted Georgia has no recourse outside of a lawsuit when a board fails to follow the law or even its own rules.
When they go off the rails, it is the most fundamental democratic process. The community can elect new leaders.
HOA management companies always love to blame the board when it comes to anything going awry. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of board members out there. You know, what do they say? There's a meme out there that says, when you see a group of Karens huddled together, what do they call them? An HOA. The board members are leaning on the management company to know exactly what they should be doing within their neighborhood. Most people are just homeowners. They've never run a whole community because it's basically like running your own little tiny government within the community itself. And you don't want to tick off the neighbors. And you're trying to make everybody happy in the community. Even though their leadership, they're looking for direction from the management company. So a lot of times when you're really mad at a board member, many times it has to do with the management company.
There needs to be oversight. There is no oversight of the HOAs. Unfortunately, it's become... We kind of know it. We know it's like a wild, wild west.
You know, she's absolutely right. There are no regulations when it comes to HOAs. There is no oversight. They can make up these silly rules. They can have secret meetings. They can hide money at different places. But that doesn't mean that you don't have the right to sue them. And with all these stories that I've seen over the past year, the ones that actually got things done and got their HOA straight were the ones who got their local news involved and got themselves an attorney. I know you're going to have to come out of that money out of your pocket, but maybe you can work with the attorney to say if they lose, the management company loses, they have to pay your attorney fees. I'm not an attorney. You're going to have to check with them to see if that's even legal. I don't know, but it seems to me that'd be the best way to recoup your money, especially when you know that they're doing something nefarious. If you happen to have a story about your HOA that you would love to share with me and be featured in a future video, let me know. If you don't want to be recognized, I can do one of those cool things where I put the silhouette over your face and disguise your voice.
I've never done that before, but I think it'd be kind of fun.
To watch more videos about HOAs here in the United States, you're going to want to watch these videos right here. My name is Kristina Smallhorn, your real estate whisperer, and I tell you all this because good real estate information matters.